Hi everyone, welcome to another Business Book Club. My name's Michelle Pratt of Dive Deeper Development, and this time I've been reading a book called Stretch by Scott Sonenshein. Now the premise of this book is that he's trying to dispel the myth that more resources equals better results. He said we grossly overestimate the importance of acquiring more resources, and we grossly underestimate our ability to make more of what we have. He describes chasing like this treadmill mentality that the more resources we acquire, the faster the pace our mind sets on the treadmill, therefore the faster we run to keep up, and of course we don't actually get any further. So this really resonated with me. Had a lot of time to think over lockdown, starting to think I should do more of this, more of that. And actually I've had this inkling that maybe it's not about doing more. So I was interested to read the book and see if actually less is more. The book starts by describing the problem with what Scott Sonenshein calls the chase mentality. This is the mentality of always chasing, always looking for more, better, faster, more resources. He said there are 4 reasons why we do this. The first one is social comparison. As human beings, we are social creatures, and of course we have a natural tendency to compare ourselves to others to get an idea of where we stand. The problem is, of course, we tend to compare upwards, or what he calls upward comparison. We tend to compare with people who have more than what we do, and we tend to seek what they have, even if that doesn't necessarily make a better measure of how we get to where we want to be. He also talks about functional fixedness, meaning we tend to have a very fixed idea of what we see resources as being useful for. He gives the example of children being set a problem with getting a teddy off a shelf, helping him get down from the shelf by using a series of toys. When the toys are laid out in front of the children, older children tend to fare quite well, younger children not so well. In the second condition, the children were given the items, but the box was used as a container for the toys. In this experiment, the older children struggled. They didn't realise they could use the box. They saw the box only as a container. In that condition, the younger children actually did better and were more likely to see the box as a tool for getting the teddy from the shelf. So we tend to only think of resources as being useful for one thing, quite a fixed idea. He also talks about mindless accumulation and gives the example of a study where people were able to click on some software in exchange for some chocolate and get a reward. But of course they would have to give up the pleasant music they were listening to listen to a really jarring soaring sound. So incentive to get the chocolate but not to hear the sound. In this experiment, people clicked on the software multiple times to gain lots of chocolate, even though they were told they couldn't take the chocolate out of the room with them after the experiment. There was only so much chocolate they could eat before leaving. Despite this, people had a tendency to click an awful lot more and acquire an awful lot more chocolate than they could physically eat. So why did they do it? They had this chase mentality. They run this experiment a second time, by the way, with the amount of chocolates being capped, and they actually found that the people who had the amount they could acquire capped enjoyed the experiment a lot more than those who could acquire as much as they like. So chasing doesn't necessarily get you where you want to be, and it doesn't make you any happier either. The final one is resource squandering. He talks about 2 departments given some money to invest, and interestingly the department that had more resources to use squandered an awful lot more than the department who had less. He says that more resources can be useful to a point. They give you the opportunity and the freedom to experiment, but there does come a critical point at which having more resources makes you more wasteful and less effective. So what is the answer to having a chasing mindset? Well, of course, it's having a stretching mindset. And the book is full of examples of people who have used this stretching mentality. A few things they have in common is the willingness to act instead of using endless planning. Scott Sonenshein says that planning gives us a fixed idea of the future, and of course when you have a plan we have this confirmation bias. We seem quite wedded to it. This of course means we miss things that weren't in our original plan, and there may be opportunity to stretch our resources there, but it also means we spend a lot of time wasting a lot of time and resources planning for a future that may never happen. Good stretchers act and learn as they go. It allows them to adapt to the environment and see things as they really are, and to respond what's in front of them with whatever they have. He also talks about constraints, and he gives a fantastic example of a filmmaker making a really good film on a budget, literally using whatever he had to hand and even changing the storyline to fit the resources that he had. It's what allowed the film to get picked up. And this introduced this interesting idea that resources are created. So for example, if you take a rock, it has a quality in itself and it's heavy, but it's not until you use the rock that its value is really known. If you throw it, it could be a weapon. If you put it on paper, it becomes a paperweight. If you paint it, it becomes a canvas or a place of art. So constraints tend to make us more resourceful and see things for the potential that they have, and the value really comes from where we use them, not just from what we've got. He also talks about frugality. Now, not being too frugal, of course, but when we adopt a frugal mindset, we tend to reuse things or recycle them, and it frees us from the convention of what those things should normally be used for. It also causes us to think long term and not think short term and be wasteful. Finally, it points out that resources can be a distraction. We can be distracted by chasing, and of course, it may not get any closer towards our goal. So what can we do to make better use of our resources? Well, here are just a few actually of the suggestions Scott Sonenshein makes in the book. No time to cover them all here, but some great tips. The first one is to just say no. If you're offered more resources, more money, or perhaps even if you're offered a promotion or the next level of job up, consider saying no. Don't always chase the new and shiny things. Consider that actually going to help you get to your aims. And I love this idea of thinking about what you really want and asking yourself what resources do you need to get there instead of just mindlessly chasing more. So can you use what you already have? Ask yourself this before chasing more. He also says we adopt a mindset of curiosity and go exploring. So expose yourself to new situations, new people, or vary your routine each week. Each week, try and do something different. Take a different route to work. Hold your meeting in a different venue. Invite different people to the meeting. Mix it up, and this rather than going on autopilot, mixing up our routine can make us more creative and look at our resources with new eyes. He also talks about new neighbours, so changing who you compare to. So if a chase mentality is caused by always chasing upwards, why not compare yourself to people who are really good stretchers or people who have what you want, or rather than always looking upwards to people we admire. We may want what they have, but they may not be a good comparison for our circumstances. He also said appreciate what you have as well. So there's this idea in the book of expressing gratitude for the resources that you have. He said take stock at them and maybe even write it down. Think about what you're really grateful for those resources and try to really appreciate them. He suggests you shop your closet, go through what you've got and really start to remind yourself of it first of all, but also value it too. He also mentioned planning backwards. So most people plan forwards, they make their detailed plan and then they execute. Scott Sonenshein suggests that what we could do is that we should spend a day just acting first, go leaping from action to action, and at the end of the day journal what we did and reflect on it to see if there's a better way of using our resources and of course a better way of using our time. He makes the comparison between a symphony, which is written and followed, to more of a jazz music kind of situation. Can you challenge yourself to be more like a jazz musician rather than a member of an orchestra? And finally, the one I'll cover here is just to break it up. And I love this idea. I've used this before as a creativity exercise. Take a resource that you have, break it down and ask yourself, one, can it be broken into smaller parts? And if it can those smaller parts imply a new or different use? So he gives the example of people given the challenge to connect two steel rings together and they're given a candle. Now, of course, when you melt the candle, the wax isn't enough to hold the steel rings together. And what people tend to overlook is the fact that you can use the threads in the wick to tie the steel bands together. So when you break something down into its constituent parts, can you do more? And I like that idea. It's not just good for resources or things that you have, but I was thinking from a business perspective as well. Are there parts of the services that I offer my clients I could break down? So could I just charge for the consultation? Is there a particular tool or technique that I use that people would like just to have in bite-sized chunks? I don't know if that's the answer, but it made me think about it in new and different ways. So what did I think of the book? I thought it was a really interesting read and one that really resonated with me. I've been thinking recently, I need to get out there, I need to do more networking, I need to do more. And this book really caught my eye because I began to realise that actually I don't need to do more networking. What I need to do is deepen the relationships with the networks I already have. They're full of people with loads of valuable information. Perhaps I should tap into those more rather than throw more activity into the mix. So I'm definitely bought into the idea of stretching. In lockdown, it was very tempting to buy more stuff, but I think it's definitely a good idea to rummage through what you have and repurpose it, reuse it, upcycle it. In the book, there's lots of examples of both the chasing mentality and the stretching mentality, and at times I think it's a bit repetitive. It labours the point a bit too much with maybe too many examples. That said, it was interesting and it's easy to read, and it's also really easy to follow. In the book, there are lots of very clear, actionable ideas. In fact, Scott put a workshop at the end of the book, and you'd be hard pressed not to walk away from that with some fresh ideas about how to stretch your resources. So I'm sold on the idea, so that's been really useful for me, and I would definitely recommend the book. It may help you view what you already have with a fresh pair of eyes, and of course going forward, who knows what the future holds, resources may be more scarce. The good news is we don't necessarily need more of them.